wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and things got really ugly at BMO Field this past weekend. Even so much so that John Herdman, good vibes, good feelings, John Herdman ended up being really upset about it. We will talk, of course, about TFC's heavy 4-1 defeat to Chicago Fire Saturday night. We'll ask, is there a reason to be concerned in terms of this performance? We'll get into this week's Herds the Word because, as aforementioned, John Herdman had some things to say. And, of course, we'll take a quick look into Wednesday's midweek game at home against Nashville. So much to bring up this week, but the triumphant trio is back. All three of us finally on a show for the first time. It feels like in forever. My co-host Jeffrey P. Nesker and Michael Singh. Guys, how you doing, man? How's it's been a while since we've all been in the same podcast live show ecosystem. So how we all doing?
Hot.
Yes.
Very hot.
Yeah.
It is
Not because of the Chicago Fire on the weekend. It's toasty in Toronto. That was such a dad joke. That's a joke.
Yeah,
I
it was
feel
a pretty big dad joke. It was
welcome.
fantastic.
We have
I feel like
welcome.
I'm better than that. I feel like that's something like, I don't know.
Live broadcasting. No mulligans allowed. And you don't get to tag me with that. I'm not catching your strays, buddy. That was yours. You got to wear it, not me.
Father's Day, man. It was Father's Day. That's for the fathers.
Exactly. And it was for
Happy
the dads
belated
out
Father's
there.
Day for all
Happy
the
belated
daddies
Father's Day.
and the baby daddies out there, you know?
Indeed. Yeah, I echo that. It's stinking hot outside and will be all week, and that's great. Guys, well done on that. Who are you? And not just well done for the normal reasons, but well done. You guys didn't jump down that dude's throat when we got the wooden spoon wrong. And he attributed the treble season to 2018 TFC, which certainly wasn't. And I'm listening back and I'm like, which one of these guys is going to tell him? And you never did. And it was fantastic. And you've like leveled up. You're like, that's a boss fight in podcasting. Like you didn't go for the low hanging fruit. And so there you go.
You should have seen my face while he was saying it though.
I'm sure.
Back of my mind, I'm just like, bro, you math. The math ain't mathing, brother.
Yeah. Remember Nemanja Nikovic? No, we don't, because we were too busy winning trebles and getting to the final of the CONCACAF Champions League. But regardless, I mean, it was a little horrifying to listen to it after the fact, because there were a few moments where either dude knows the future. He certainly doesn't know the past, so maybe he knows the future. And he was like kind of telegraphing that we were going to get our clocks clean this weekend, and it sort of fell on deaf ears. And it was
pretty good guess with that, right?
Yeah.
It was.
Nicely,
well, let's jump into it, guys. Yeah, let's jump into it.
There it was before. It was just like completely playing down the Chicago Fire, talking up TFC, and this guy came in and absolutely humbled us, and so did the Chicago Fire. So yeah, takes away. Also, actually, one more thing.
Yeah.
I was super exhausted today, but this show got me so fired up because I knew I was gonna have to go on here defending my boy Alonso Coelho. I knew there's some pitchforks.
Oh, it's coming, yeah.
So I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's get
all
it
right.
right.
Well, we'll get into that in just a moment. TFC, of course, lose this weekend 4-1 against Chicago Fire. And look, I mean, is it worst performance of the year? Most likely, even though you gave up 5 against Vancouver. Is this like the worst performance of the year?
Yeah, it was. Vancouver was away, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. That's all the difference in the world. And Vancouver, you know, if you're to listen to at least the MLS punditry, are like a dark horse sort of sleeping giant-y kind of squad that everybody's kind of pegged as having a breakout season. And so, you know, with Vancouver, and then there's also the Canadian equivalent, but with Vancouver, it felt like, yeah, you know, maybe we underestimated them, and they're also a pretty decent team. But with the Chicago Fire, I mean, this team's a shambles, and we made them look like, prime. We made them look like world beaters out there. It was a gift to these guys. First away win of the season, first away win, in multiple seasons. Um, this one hits different, and I don't know how to jam this in there, but at first, and this always happens. It's just going to be even worse now with all the soccer. But I was like, this is just MLS after like a solid day of watching the Euros. Like, of course it's going to look slow and kind of all over the place. And then I quickly realized, no. This is an optical illusion. This is actually dog S right now. Like, this is proper dog S. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was the worst loss of the season. Obviously at home is a big thing, but I just also the fashion in which they lost. It was really it was an opportunity too. Like it's such a good spot for you after coming off, what did we say? One win in their last 6 games.
Yeah.
You're at
Mhm.
home, coming off international break, a team that you circle on the calendar, given the form, 3 points, and you go and lay an absolute egg. And there were moments in that game where TFC fought back into it. The score was 1-1 at the break. It probably could have been worse. And then you come out of the second half and it's even flatter. It was, yeah, again, heading into the second half of the year, quote unquote second half of the year. That's obviously just not the way you wanna chalk it up.
No, and I
Mm.
mean you're looking at a game when you just look back at it. You dominate possession. You have 60% possession of the ball during the game. Your passing is up. You're doing what on paper looks like you should be doing to win a match. But in many ways, the one thing that we've talked about this team is that sometimes there's issues with discipline, and not necessarily in this case discipline with taking cards, but discipline in terms of just making those shot in the foot mistakes that
Mhm.
cost you games. And this is a game in many ways that I tweeted this out after the game. It's just a stupid way to lose a game. Like, it's just a
Yeah.
really stupid, like, you just get bossed off the pitch. That's one thing, right? Or a team has just way more quality than you. That's one thing. But this one was you're just looking back at this, and like almost every goal that Chicago scored is off a bad giveaway or
A
a bad
howler.
decision. Yeah, just a bad decision.
And
Individual
you
errors by TFC players, and I think that's what ended up sticking kind of in the craw of John Herdman after the game.
Yeah, because it wasn't just the goals either. There was, like,
Mhm.
about a half dozen chances that didn't go in, hit the post or Luka Gavrin bails them out,
Mhm.
where this scoreline, yeah, we're talking about a 4-1 or yeah, 4-1 game. It easily could have been, like, 6, 7, 8-1,
Easily.
8-0 realistically, because that goal probably
Easily.
shouldn't have went in. It was a very soft goal that, Lorenzo
Yeah.
That
Insigne.
originally was chalked off for offside.
Exactly. So, I mean, in that light, I think you're bang on. Like, there was too many breakdowns defensively, and this was a team, don't forget, like, start of the year, their biggest pride was defense, and how if you're gonna win games, you're not gonna give up much, and this team just gave up way too much in various ways, but especially the ones that stand out like a sore thumb is just the simple turnovers and silly mistakes leading to really
Nutmegging an
dangerous
attacker,
misses.
trying to nutmeg an attacker in your own box when you're trying to clear a ball is pretty egregiously bad choice. Yeah, I agree.
Hey, you wanna start? We can
No,
start,
no,
man.
I don't. I
No,
don't
we
because
won't go there. I know we're
yeah,
getting there. We're warming up to
we're
it. We're
getting there.
warming
We're
up
getting
to
there.
it.
Just quickly, did I? I don't. The Tunnel Club had a really good point, and it was kind of tongue in cheek. But they asked, do you think that Herdman said, "All right, we gotta tone down the yellows and the disciplinary problems," and therefore kind of made the team forget how to play, so they were playing really, really cautious? Do you think there's a nugget of truth in there? I think it's too easy, but also this season is hilarious. This campaign has been hilarious, and quite often, it's like Occam's razor. The simplest solution is often the answer. So there might be a lot of truth in that. That, like, he said to these guys, "Don't get any yellows," and they're like, "All right, how do I play?" And that was all she wrote, kind of thing.
Yeah. I honestly, I think this is you chalk it up to just everybody being off and this is a bad night. I don't know if this is a real indicator of things. Like, as bad as it was, and it was bad. Like, we're all here saying it was bad. Everybody in the comments is saying it's bad, right? Like, we know it's bad. But I think it's just one of those nights where you just come out and you just don't have it. Like, you're going to have one or two of those a season where you just come out and you just, nothing works, right? And just everything that you think you can pull off just doesn't come off. And that just felt like Saturday. Like, at one point when it was 3-1, it was kind of like one of those things where I'm looking at that game and I'm like, this is just a game where you just don't have it. And you can't point at one specific reason as to why. There's probably a multitude of reasons, but I just think it's just one of those nights where you got it wrong and they got it right.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, man. Because, like, to me, I can't look at it in a bubble like that. There's too much of what I saw, Bika, that reminds me too much of the TFC team of 2023. And I'm not the first person to say this. I'm, what's his face? Matty Doyle in his Sunday column said almost the same thing. Like, this is the TFC starting to suffer the same individual mistakes that doomed them last season. So yeah, I hope you're right, but I can't go there and look at it in a bubble like you're sort of positing here.
I wouldn't go that far. This is a completely different team, in my opinion. Different identity, different shape, different mentality, different quality, quite frankly. And I think that I still think that team is in the past. Now, are we at a point now where we can, say confidently TFC is a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference, and this is, totally unacceptable, all these things? Like, no, we're not, obviously. The reality is, like, when you look at this Toronto FC team heading into the year, everyone had them, everyone except Turrets out there had them out of a playoff, or like, maybe 9th in the Eastern Conference. That's probably, though, closer to this team, what this team is, than what this team showed at the start of the year. Because now we're not just talking about one game, right? We're starting to talk about a group of games now where this team has left something on the table. Whether, it wasn't Saturday's performance the last 7 games. It wasn't. They played much better, right? But it's various different things adding up to now a run of games where we're talking about 1 win in 7, and that matters, right?
Yes, it does.
There's not the same feeling about this team as there was a couple weeks ago, right? It has shifted here. Now, what I commend this team for so far this season is their ability to bounce back, right? You talk about that game against Vancouver and what transpired during that game. Well, they were able to, kind of put that in the rear view here. And, even though they fell short against Charlotte the next time out, they still played a decent away game to Charlotte. They lost 3-2 that night. Still got a red card. It wasn't their night. But then they bounced back against New England. And then, of course, you had the Canadian Championship and Orlando in between, and Dallas and Saint Laurent again. Like, then they started stringing things together. So the fact that this team was able to absorb a blow and still keep going does give me some faith in the fact that they'll be able to, bounce back Wednesday against a Nashville side, which we'll get into a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's that's a key. Again, it's the adage that John Herdman's made, that this team, good teams don't lose 3 in a row. Now, granted, they're not on a 3-game losing streak right now, but I think it's more of a, you come out with a performance like that at home, you have to bounce back. You get another opportunity. It's almost, we'll see how it goes on Wednesday, but it may be almost a blessing that they play so quickly after that, right? Like, you kind of just get back into it and are like, okay. And this is a question I have for you, but like, is it just one of those ones where you kind of burn the game film and say, guys, it was terrible. I think you all know it was terrible. I think you all know what the issues were. Let's get back in the training and focus on Nashville, and let's get a result here. Jeffy, go ahead.
I think if you do that, you're doing a disservice to the evolution of the team. I think there's been too much compulsion.
Mhm.
You know, remember we were talking about Herdman's propensity while he was charming us at the preseason town hall to basically within like in half a sentence kind of shift focus on 2023 to the Bradleys, right? And it wasn't absolute, but it was certainly there, and it left us all with a bad taste in our mouth. And I think that there's been a compulsion to kind of, you know, lunkheadedly move forward. And I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I think to answer your question, and you're asking what I would do, I don't necessarily know if this is what John Herdman's going to do or if the front office is going to do it. But no, I think you have to look at it for what it is. This is showing in many ways that there are still a lot of things about this 2024 TFC squad that are a little bit too close to for comfort to the 2023 squad, and I think you ignore them at your own peril. That's my honest answer to your question.
Yeah, I would agree in to some extent there with Jeff. Like, there is, like, things have things have not been great lately, right? And this is I think Saturday's performance was it encapsulated that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Things, no matter how good you are in a season, things are not going to be running the same way throughout the year. You know, oppositions adjust to whatever game plan that you had. There's going to be ups and downs in a way, but like from a footballing perspective, you have to, Jeff used the word evolve there. You do have to evolve as a side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I don't think the reason why Toronto lost was because Chicago's game plan necessarily for them really worked. This is so there's kind of like a truth there between both of your questions, because like in a way, Mike, you're right. Or I don't know if you were saying this, but your question is, do they kind of throw this one away because you know it was silly errors that led to goals? In a way, you're right. There is some truth to that, but then when it starts to become a pattern, then I think there's reason for adjustment, and you know there's always learning opportunities there. So I don't think you can quite do that because this team isn't at that level yet either, right? It
I've
still is
got
a very young
Yeah,
team.
no, that's fair. That's very 100% fair. And I
I
just
got a
wonder,
question
like,
for the
then,
two of you
yeah,
guys,
go.
just quickly to interject. I hope I'm not asking your question. Do you think that, like, let's go, because I mean we're not best friends. Like, player like Ame Mabika, right? Who's guilty of the same BS that we've seen a season ago that I can't get out of my head. What's the learning experience here? Don't do that. I mean, how many times do you say don't do that? So I guess my question to you guys is, what are you learning from this, and how do you take it to the players? Um, because let's be honest, a lot of those players are not long for this world in a TFC shirt. So, you know, what do you do? And I guess this goes to, I saved this to Calcio Kulo's question or statement, which is maybe some guys found out they are not part of future plans with the upcoming window. And that's kind of an insight into the quality of play that we saw. I mean, listen, I agree with you. Professionals should professional, right? But soccer is full of emotional people and petulance and that sort of thing. And sometimes it's celebrated. So, like, I don't know, man. I just, you know, is Ami Babuka going to even pay attention to his video session at this point? And is there a point in having one? Because it essentially boils down to, hey, don't do it. Please, for the love of God, don't.
Okay, let's use a better example than Ame Mabika, because you're talking about the 25th player
Yeah,
on this
guys
roster,
making no
right?
money really shouldn't get
Yeah.
that many minutes. You got some injuries and a
Zero
suspension
Zero
at the back
minutes.
line, so
He's
you got
Zero
in,
of
he's
them.
not in a good place right now, right?
Yeah.
With his
Mhm.
football, we know that. Can he still learn? Yeah, he's a smart guy, but who else are we referring to? Like, let's just say Alonso Coelho, right? Didn't have a great game. Is there learning opportunities for Alonso Coelho? Absolutely,
100%.
there is,
Mhm.
Yes.
right? I'd argue there's learning opportunities for some of the veterans too, right? Major League Soccer, you're still kind of learning the
Like
league.
that first goal, like Davy Flores, like
For
he
sure.
got his pocket picked badly.
Oof.
Well, no, he stopped. He was
Youch.
waiting for
Yeah.
the ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even Sigurd Rosted playing it inside to Nixon Gomes, or not Nixon Gomes, sorry. I forget who it was that he played it inside to, but clearly was not ready for the ball.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, is that something where you can kind of just, instead of trying to play out of the back, maybe in those situations when you know there's a bit of panic, there's a little bit of chaos going on after the giveaway, is that something where
Rosie.
you need to decide to
Mhm.
make a, a tougher decision, I guess let's call it, or
Play it
easier
long.
decision, depending which way you want to frame
probably
it.
easier. Play it
Yeah.
long and
Right.
reset,
Yeah.
right? Yes, you're getting
Yeah,
the ball
exactly.
back on the second ball, but you can reset and reorganize.
Exactly. So I
Mhm.
think those are more so the types of discussions that they need to have, as opposed to some of the, like Kevin Long. You don't need to talk to Kevin Long, right?
Mhm.
Kevin Long gets it, right? He knows he messes up, doesn't handle the situation the way he handled the situation, right?
Yeah.
You don't really need to say much about that. But
Mhm.
there are certain instances I think you can adjust and talk about, how to mitigate some of those circumstances.
Sure, and I think let's
Mhm.
get into it with.
Yeah, let's
And
get
look,
into it.
we are pointing at Quajo in the moment. This doesn't mean it's just on him. That's not what we're saying here. But as you said, Mike, before, there's a couple of times that start to make a pattern where you start needing to have conversations, and this is my opinion. Like, this is a player.
It's
This is
wrong.
a
Your
player
opinion's wrong.
who.
Yeah, your opinion's wrong. I
Yeah,
don't
I
care.
know. But like,
Mhm.
this is a player who, look, you're right, 100%. I think he can learn from this. I think he's gonna get better. You can see all of it. You can see the skill set. It's all there. It's 100% all there.
Mhm.
Right now, except the decision making. Right, the decision making sometimes is just it's poor. Right, at times. Right, in terms of just the not just going back to make a pass, but the weight of the pass sometimes.
Mhm.
Making risky decisions. When you're playing out of the back, I get it. There are coaches out there that are going to be fine with you making some passes to try to play out of the back and keep possession, because if you do break those passes, you do get space for Lorenzo or
Oh, yeah.
Fede
High
or your
risk,
wing
high
backs to
reward.
get into. Yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
you can live with that to a certain extent. But I think there are moments in time to make those kind of passes, and there are moments in times to make those decisions. Right now, that decision making for him, I don't think isn't there. Even the ones that he successfully gets through sometimes are ones where I'm like, do you really need to make that pass right now? Right? You just didn't get caught this time,
Mhm.
right? So again,
But I think
I'm jumping on him.
that's the
I
knife
get it.
edge that a playmaker lives on, right? Like
Yeah,
the ones that
100%.
work spectacularly, and the ones that don't. You have to mitigate those risks, right? And I think, Mike, not to interrupt, but like
No, go ahead.
our midfield is a problem, and it's been a good problem and it's been a bad problem, and now it's kind of a bad problem again. And I'm talking about the, people like to harp on Oso, but without Oso in there, it's a whole lot of the exact same toys. They all do the exact same thing, and there's nobody really to counter for the missing bits of that. I don't, I think Turtz puts it interesting. Quajo and Flores both have been equally bad with their giveaways. It's a philosophy issue right now. And I think, not to put words in Turtz's mouth, but I think that points to the fact that, like, you have to make an adjustment. We don't have Oso for a while. This platooning all of these alike players is a roster issue, but it is also kind of a stubbornness issue right now.
But you kind of got what you got, though, right? Like
Then we can't complain about it. You know what I mean? Because then we know what we've gotten. It is 3 turnover machines that don't necessarily do well under pressure, and any team can sort of game plan around that.
But I think you
Mikey,
can ask.
get in there, man. That expression.
Go ahead,
this
Mike.
is
Go ahead.
this is
Yeah.
wild. This is wild. This is wild.
Mhm.
Is Alonso Coelho prone to the error, the really bad error from time to time? Yes, absolutely. It's happened a couple times this season. Has it happened maybe more often lately? Yeah, at times. Saturday was a terrible game, and he'll be the first to raise his hand,
Mhm.
right? The I will say the nutmeg on the end line, I don't really fault him for, because his first instinct was to look for a pass, and then when he doesn't see an angle to play the pass, then he decides to kind of do what he could with it. And it wasn't really more so he's going for a nutmeg. He's more so, I don't know, maybe trying to bank it off the attacker, and that attacker opens his legs, and obviously that leads to a turnover. Whatever it was,
Mm.
could he have made a safer play there? Yes. Um, the angles at which Alonso Coelho plays the ball makes you a better team. If you're playing it safe and you're not taking risks, you are not going to be the ball dominant team that Toronto
I
FC
love
want
that.
to be,
I
right?
love that.
If you don't have the ability to play in tight spaces, you're not going to be the ball dominant team that Toronto FC want to be. Alonso Coelho, I would argue, is one of the best in Major League Soccer, quite frankly, at doing that particular skill set, playing in tight spaces, keeping possession, playing progressive passes, those types of things. Oftentimes he is first, second, third in Toronto FC when it comes to touches on the ball,
Yes,
when it
that is
comes
true.
to passes
Yep.
made. TFC play through Alonso Coelho a lot. So with that, you have to understand that mistakes are going to happen. You also have to understand that this is Alonso Coelho's first full season in Major League Soccer,
Yep.
right? Last year he signed from TFC2 and then was injured for a good chunk of the year. But he's still, and then played on a really, really, really poor, disorganized team. So he is still learning in Major League Soccer. So just like we talk about Toronto FC and how they're going to have growing pains, I think Alonso Coelho as a player is going to have growing pains.
Oh, 100%.
And
I agree.
and yeah, it's not something that you, in my opinion, you can live with right now. Like, you can live with Alonso Coelho getting better and improving on this team the way it's built. And I think more times than not, we've seen a 7 out of 10 Alonso Coelho performance than we've seen on Saturday night, right? He's a very consistent player, in my opinion. And he's passing accuracy, third most accurate passer on the team, despite seeing the ball the most. I think there's a nice partnership there with Davy Flores and Alonso Coelho. We've talked about it actually quite a bit this
we
season
have.
about
Yeah.
how good of a partnership they've had. So I think there's going to be ups and downs, going to be low points. I have confidence, full confidence that Alonso Coelho will be able to bounce back and be the ball dominant player that I think he's capable of being.
Fair. And yes, you do. Look, if you have a young player that you really believe in, and as I said it before, as we've all said here, super talented. We know he's an incredibly talented player. But are there times where you can ask him to be a little bit more safer with the ball, right? There are, and that's what I've said, moments, right? That decision making in moments. Overall in the game, yes, I want him to take risks. I want him to try crossfield balls and switch play suddenly, and I want him to try to thread through balls. And yes, sometimes, yes, I do want you to pass back when it looks like,
there's
in those moments.
instances for sure.
But there are moments in time to do that, and there are moments in time to be safe. And it's not just him, right? Davey does this. Kevin ran into this situation on the weekend, right? You talk about Sigurd. Sigurd runs. These are vets, right, that are running into these same issues as well. And that's where I think, again, whether that is a word in the ear from John Herdman and the coaching staff, or that's a slight change in the overall philosophy and how you play, it costs you points, right? Like when you make those mistakes, and those are, mistakes made because an individual is either trying to do too much or is trying to take a risk when there is no real need to take a risk, which I think almost all of those plays, on Saturday were essentially you didn't need to take that risk, right? You could either play it out, yes, okay, you don't want to necessarily give the ball away cheaply and give it back to the team cheaply. But again, there are opportunities for you to reset, reorganize. Like, I'll be perfectly honest. Like, if Alonso Coelho decided to put that ball out before the first goal, which again, it was the pass that led to a turnover that got Davy Flores got picked, and then it's the goal.
Yeah,
I'd be fine with that, right? If they find a way to break you down when you're set up like that, and they make a really great pass and they're in and they score, okay, I can live with that. It's you make a pass, now your team has to scramble, now you maybe recover, but you're still out of position. Yeah. Davy Flores gets picked, your mind's not there, team's out of position, boom, you score, right? Yeah. And that's where that's what I'm asking for, right? More than anything, is the sharpening of decision making in key moments.
There's the player right now playing for Spain. Everyone knows him. Best holding midfielder, in my opinion, in the world. It's Rodri, right? Rodri's so great at what you kind of define, but we have to also understand we're talking about a 24-year-old Major League Soccer first-year player, right? He's not going to be perfect in his decision making every time. But if he's in his first year and he's being really the catalyst for this team, the person who's being played through, like that's one heck of a talent that you want to develop and you want to grow, right? And part of that is going to be, dealing with situations like you kind of just touched on, Mike. Is it
Mhm.
happening maybe a touch too often? Yeah. Right. Was it very glaringly obvious on Saturday? Absolutely. Um, Again, he's in my squad every day of the week. He's in
Yeah.
my 11, almost every day of the week. Only the reason why he might not be is because TFC actually have pretty decent you have I was thinking about this, like, w big picture question, what's the reason why Toronto FC have been able to, have the start to the season that they've had, right? How have they managed to be in a position where they're competing for a top 4 spot in the Eastern Conference, 16, 17 games in? An obvious
Mm.
answer is, like, the DPs. John Herdman's got the DPs to buy in. Another potential answer, maybe formation change. For me,
Mhm.
it's the midfield and how much better the midfield is from where it was a year ago. Like,
Well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, who was playing in midfield for Toronto FC last season, right? We had Ozo, Brett McBradley, you had
Sylvania.
uh, Brandon Cervania at times,
Mhm.
you had, I think, Kosi
Mark
Thompson was in
Anthony
there
K. You had Latif
at times, Mark Anthony
DeAndre
Blessing.
Kerr
K,
sometimes dropped
T
in there.
DeAndre
Blessing.
Kerr,
Who
Cozy
else? DeAndre
Thompson
DeAndre
Kerr
Kerr would
sometime.
sometime.
jump in sometimes, right?
Shaquille
Yeah.
Marshall-Rutty played sometime in
Yeah.
center midfield.
Sometimes, yeah. Yep.
For me, the biggest reason is just how good our midfield has been this season. So, while we can chalk up Saturday's loss to potentially how poor maybe the combination of Alonso Cuello and Davy Flores and also some of the backline. I mean, let's get real. There
Mhm.
was some
Yeah,
less
they were
than 7 out of 10 performances out there
no.
over the weekend. And, we can also add a guy like DeAndre Kerr into the mix, which I feel like we should also have that conversation.
We are. We're
Yeah, we
going
may
to.
have to start having that conversation, and I'm a
Yeah.
truther on DeAndre, but
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Franco Ibarra is another one. Shout out George.
Oh yeah,
You know,
right. For 5
we're talking
seconds, yeah, I
about
forgot about
we're
him.
talking about John
Yeah.
Herman's been able to every single week put in Matty Longstaff, put in Lonzo Coyo, put in Davy
Hmm.
Flores, and TFC have been able to control more games than not. It's a day and night how much better this midfield is, and I think a
Right, but are we
huge
not
reason for
seeing their
that is
ceiling now? Because I
on
agree with
Quajo, I
you.
don't think we've seen the ceiling.
No, I completely agree with that. I'm just saying this midfield as a unit. Have we seen the ceiling on what they can do as a unit? And is that because I agree with you, Mikey, I agree with you completely.
yeah,
There's a
it's a good
risk that comes
question.
with this reward. And when you're trying to blood this team to play the way that you want it to, you have to accept there's going to be certain gaffes like that Chicago Fire game. Of course, as fans, we're pissed because we saw 3 points there. I'm all about the vibes. I expected this season to be a complete disaster, so I'm still happy as a pig in S. But I love where your little monologue took my brain. I love it because yeah, like, well, I mean, I was thinking the whole time, like, do you even want to tell somebody like Coelho to be more to be less risk averse, or is that going to overload the kid? Right? And you just say, go for it, Alonso. And occasionally you're going to have a howler and we're going to cover you, which when we get into herd word is the complete opposite of what actually happens. So I just don't know. I mean, this game sucked and it broke a
Yeah,
lot of paradigms. I think it really did, right down to the post-game press conference. Right. But you're speaking a lot of truth, Mikey. And I wonder, you know, without adding new recruits to the mix, have we seen the ceiling of this group in terms of to expect chaos occasionally? Just because
it,
it just is.
it's a good question, Jeff, and I think it's a fair question. Have we seen? I don't think so.
Okay.
It's still a very, Matty Longstaff's younger than Alonso Coelho, right? It
Yeah.
still is
My
a,
God.
a young midfield. I mean, and also like when we talk about midfield, like you also we gotta, loop in the Matty Longstaffs, the Derek Etienne
Of
Juniors,
course.
the Lorenzo Insignes, the Federico Bernardeschi, the Roger Kerr. It's a whole team that really opens things up. So when you have Bernadeschi on the pitch and you have Insigne on the pitch, all of a
And also
sudden
on the pitch. And
Mhm.
you have easier targets to hit when you're Alonso Cuello and you're in tight areas and you know where certain people are going to be. When you're uh when you have a guy like, not to pick on him, but let's just say DeAndre Kerr, right? And you
Mhm.
have DeAndre Kerr and he's losing possession as your striker, and you have to consistently do the same thing and try to look for patterns on the field. Um, the more that you have to do that, the tougher it gets. And
Sure.
when a guy is maybe a dark hole on the pitch, it impacts then your ability to go out and be that maestro that you're trying to be on the pitch. So that said, I mean, I don't want to say like Alonso Cuello has full license to go out there and do whatever he wants. I still think there's learning opportunities, and I think Saturday's a big learning opportunity for him. I'm just not writing him off, or like, uh,
Neither am
you know,
I.
I don't think I
Bought all the
drop him
stock.
out of the team because he has a poor performance.
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And that's an interesting too. I mean, like there also has to be no doubt, and several people in the comments have brought this up. Is that like we are, like you said, man, we're missing like some not just some players. We're missing some absolute key players, right? You're missing an
We were missing
Osorio.
Lorenzo Insigne on
You
the
were
weekend
missing.
too.
Well, yeah, exactly. You were missing Owosu up top. You're missing Bernadeschi, right? Like we haven't seen. We keep saying this every year, so it feels like it's a just a looped back
And
recording.
it feels like a loser's lament. It's like, well, just wait. We're gonna kick your ass
Once
when
we
the
get the
moon is
full
in the
team
right.
together,
Yeah, once we get the
right.
full band together, you
So I
wait.
hate
We're gonna
saying
win
it.
the battle of the bands.
Yeah, I hate
know.
saying
we,
it, but
we
like
say
it is
every week.
But it is somewhat true, right?
But that's also life. Like at this point,
Yeah.
you got to wonder, why aren't you planning for not having the full team out there, since we never ever do? Like at a certain point, I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't care.
Well, then
I don't
let's
care.
have the
Find
conversation
somebody.
here
Yeah.
quickly about the number 9 position. Again, not to spend a ton of time on this, but look,
Yeah,
I think
fine.
we've
Let's spend a
established that
ton of
Prince
time on
Owosu
it.
should be the number 9 to start all games when fit and healthy at the moment, right? We don't know what the window's going to bring. It's still a month
This
away.
DeAndre Kerr
hoping.
hate makes me so mad. It makes me so mad. Like
Yeah,
he just
me
he
too to a
just
certain
got
extent, but
the
I also
record.
I also have to recognize that sometimes he becomes a black hole in the pitch and he can't hold the ball up sometimes, and his movement isn't always great, and right. But again, that's a guy still learning, I think, to be a number 9 in a higher professional level, right? I think he still can be good, but TFC I think would be a little bit foolish to not think about upgrading the 9 position and bringing another player in to compete with those two number 9s at the moment, right? Like I think that might, obviously it's a priority. We've been talking about this for over a year, but I think this game kind of sort of showed it, right? If you don't have Prince Owosu up top, fully fit, and yes, you believe in DeAndre Kerr, but you're going to need someone else that has a little bit more maturity and a little bit more nous in the game to either spell those moments where Prince Owosu can't play or compete to win the job outright.
We're talking about TFC's single game goal score record holder, and we know he's elite at 1.52, maximum 2 levels below MLS, right? We know this. If we have faith in Cuello to sort it out, we've got to extend that same faith to DeAndre, because the kid figures out this level, plays at the level that he's proven he can play at, a couple steps down the ladder, and we're sitting on a gold mine. So this hate drives me crazy, and we're not even 2 months removed from him making that record. Like, we have such short memories here. Yeah, he looked awful on the pitch on Sunday. He's looked awful on the pitch a lot recently, but if anybody gets a free pass, it's TFC's record single game goal scoring holder.
Yeah, it's
Right?
also tough to come in and out of the lineup, right? And he's
Perfect.
battled some injuries to start the year. There's been a lot of momentum that's been lost in his season, so he's fighting an uphill battle. Here's the thing for me about DeAndre Kerr. We talked about this show, or evolution on this show. Um, I think growing up, and just watching some highlights of him growing up, DeAndre Kerr was so much faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. His game was pace, 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 get him behind, slot a ball away, whatever it may be. He started off as a winger, right? This past year in particular, he's grown a lot, right?
Bulk up.
He's gone jacked. Like
Yeah.
he's
It's a big boy
he's
now.
put on some muscle for sure. He's a bigger
He's
guy.
getting IO size.
Yeah, the
But-
Josie room in the gym is now his, apparently. The Josie IO training center. Yeah.
Nope. But like the part of that is it's a good thing because obviously to compete in that number 9 role, you do need to have some
100%.
kind of size, kind of stature. He's never been a guy to back down from any of it either. Like he's always in there to almost a fault, right? He's had some pretty significant injuries as a result. But the reality is when you do bulk up a bit, you are prone to potentially losing. I don't want to say a step because I still think his top speed is there, but the amount of times you can hit that top speed in a game.
Yeah.
I feel like
yeah.
that part is lost on DeAndre or um, you know, it makes me appreciate Prince Owosu more because of just how relentless he is and how much ground he covers and how hard he works up top by himself. That even though he's up top by himself and he's isolated, you can still feel that he's making a difference. Whereas half the time when DeAndre Kerr's up there this season, it feels like he's a lone shark up there. Like it's really noticeable, right?
Yeah.
That he doesn't want to press relentlessly. He doesn't want to do maybe the work that's being asked of him up top in a way that a guy like Prince Owosu does. And I think part of that comes down to the fact that he is evolving as a striker. And like the other part of that evolving as a striker, you guys kind of touched on it. Like Josie was always on IO for this, is when you do get to that point in your career and you're not just about speed, it becomes about being a footballer. And
Smart
what does that mean?
movement.
Like
Yeah.
hold up play, movement, your ability to play in between lines, keep possession, see the pitch, all that kind of stuff that we don't really gloss over as a someone who watches strikers. That part of the game, he has some great starting points on, but he's still evolving as a young player. So
100%.
it almost feels like a transitional year right now for DeAndre Kerr.
It's fair.
Yeah.
God, Josie
And
had the softest feet. He really did. For such a big hold up guy, he just had the silkiest, softest feet sometime. Like
Yeah,
it just
he did.
it's what a player.
It's
what a player.
hard. You realize you don't know what you got till it's gone because it's hard to replicate. It is hard to replicate. Okay, so I mean, look, we talked about missing players. We've talked about what probably could have been wrong. We've even pointed some fingers at a few people, but let's maybe one positive. Lorenzo Insigne.
Is it a positive, guys? Really?
I'll take it as a positive. Like I'll take it as a positive in the sense that I thought he was. I mean, now granted, he's paid like that, and he's going to take a lot of shots, but I will take it as a positive that at least. And it looked like to me that trying to drag the team back into the game at times, maybe trying to do a little too much, which you're down 3-1. Yeah, okay. But I will take that as a positive in terms of, again, your DB trying to raise the level of those around him. You can free to disagree with me, but that's what I kind of saw.
I mean, you asked what Mikey Singh asked a while ago, what was most instrumental to our hot start. And while I agree with his point that it was a much more put together and capable midfield, I think it was also the fact that everybody had given up on Lorenzo Insigne, and so he got to cruise in and score those worldies, which I'm worried made a bad habit because here it was again. He's given the keys to the car after a longish injury spell, and he's immediately frustrated because of course they're not, even the Chicago Fire is not going to let him do a little prancy.
Come on, you're looking around and your teammates are giving the ball really cheaply, and you know what I mean. Like there's probably stuff you talked about in the locker room that isn't coming up. Yeah, you could be frustrated.
Or is a vacuum. I think the question has to be asked: like, is a rising tide raises all ships? Well, the opposite is also true. And nature abhors a vacuum, and I just. He's like, I don't know, man.
I'm not sure I'm following you on that one. I'm not sure.
I didn't see enough out there. I really didn't. I saw petulance. I saw laziness. I saw running when it suited the player. I saw passes that went nowhere. I saw attempts to dribble 45 guys. And then I saw petulance, like just mad petulance and a lack of accountability out there. I mean, he wasn't as bad as, we would. It left a bad taste in my mouth. So when I saw that on the rundown, positive Lorenzo Insigne, I'm like, yeah, I scored a goal, but we deserve to lose that game for nothing. Let's be honest. And
we would have had you not had your DP try to pull your team out, right? You know what I mean? Like that was
a really soft goal. I'm not
sure it's still a goal, right?
Great.
It's still a goal. Like I don't know. Look, we have spent a lot of time.
He doesn't
on this
make the team better. Joao just said it. Like as a captain, his body language is S. As a star, he doesn't perform like a star.
I don't know.
I don't necessarily super agree with that outright, but like, man, I want more.
Look,
I want more.
Look, we have spent a lot of time on this show the last year bashing this guy, right? Right? We have, right? We have spent a year, and rightfully so, right? Like, I'm not saying that it was unwarranted, okay?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, of course. You've been totally away from this.
Yeah, it's not my not my middle name or anything.
But I think we have to also understand that if a guy at that level is trying to pull his team to another level in a game, and he's watching teammates, and I'm not saying he's completely innocent of not playing the perfect game either, because he didn't. Fair. But to say that, well, we're going to get on him because he threw his hands up once because Sigurd Rosted misplayed a ball or misplayed several balls, or Alonso Cuello makes a bad back pass, or, you're not getting the ball at the right times to be able to do the thing that you're paid and we need him to do, which is get the ball in the right spots to get us in positions, right, to make things happen on the offensive end. If he does that once in a while, we can live with it. You know why? Because we had Seba, and he did the same thing. Everybody was kind of like, "Oh, well, that's just Seba being, competitive, and he wants to win, and we like that." Well, why is it different for Lorenzo Insigne right now? Well, because we're probably not as good as the 2017 team. Fine, that's a given. But I think you have to look at this season, and I'm looking at this season in isolation and not bringing in 2023 or 23
His numbers
season
this
because
season
that's gone.
For minutes played are terrific. They're
right.
They're terrific.
Well, I mean, look, when he's on the pitch, he's been a game winner. He's been a game winner when he's been on the pitch.
Oh, like his per 90. I thought you meant like just his minutes played.
I think I'm talking about both for minutes played. Like his goals and assists are not terrible, and
no, they're good. No, the per 90s are really good. But I thought you were just talking about his availability on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. And this season he has been a game-winning player. Right? He's been a game-winning player. It's exactly what you pay him to do. Yeah. And I think at that time, right now he's kind of earned a little bit of a benefit of the doubt this season, and I think we just need to give it to him at this point.
Here's the thing.
Am I wrong?
You weren't disappointed. Neither of you were disappointed, and because let me go a bit macro. I mean, and I don't know if this is, but I was just like, there was no viciousness in our attack was awful, right? Like, just aimless crosses with no weight on them, like to nobody in particular, nobody running through the channels, like panic in our attacking 18-yard box. Like, what do I do? Like, and then terrible decisions being made. I don't like seeing that. And I think we need to kind of figure out why that keeps happening. Is there a lack of trust, a lack of skill, whatever it is, it needs to be addressed.
I think you're playing with the players that you got on the pitch at the time, right? Like like if all your pieces are there, and again, we're getting back to this narrative, so I don't want to, but like if all your pieces are there, you're probably not playing the exact same ball that you're playing in the game where you don't have all the same pieces that you generally will work with during the week, right? Again, I think, did he try to do a lot on Saturday? Yes. Honestly, if he's a DP and he's trying to drag you back and he's your best player on the pitch, sometimes, yeah, you're gonna ask your DP to put the Superman cape on and try to win you a game,
Yep.
and that's okay from time to time. I'm not saying you do it every game, but it's okay from time to time. Sorry, Mike, I know you've been wanting to jump in, so let me just shut up and let you jump in.
No, that's fine. I think so. Like body language is, to me, it's been better since he first came on. We started to see a little bit of, obviously, on Saturday, frustration boils over. Right, he's not obviously very pissed about the loss. Everyone was. Difference between him and Seba, because obviously that comparison comes up a lot, is Seba earned the
It's also a fair point.
ability to do that in a way. Right,
Yeah.
Lorenzo Insigne comes in with a very accomplished resume, and had he done that from the start, okay, he might earn that ability. But there was also, a very telling season last year, which, we saw a lot of that body language in games, but there is, certainly even worse body language behind the scenes. So when
Yep.
that starts to ripple out again from those in the know, or like at least like fans who are dedicated and understand this team, then there's pause at least, right? I don't think he's earned that back yet again for his ability to do that. Are we 100% sure Lorenzo Insigne is 100% committed to this team? Like, are
I
we
think
sure
you nailed
about
it,
that?
Mikey.
Right?
I think you nailed it. That's what's going on with me. I feel the doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I think I'm probably leaning towards the fact that he probably is, but I think it does leave someone like Jeff or maybe some other fans, still with some pause when they see that. Also, if you're a casual fan and you're just attending the game, it probably doesn't. I don't know. Like, I don't know if that would go over as well, from like just a fan base's perspective.
It's a
And then
very good
obviously, what are
point
your
as well.
teammates? I don't know what the situation or the feeling is like when you're teaming on the pitch and you see that kind of body language there. So I don't know.
Fair. I also think it's fine for a player to sometimes be frustrated when you're losing 3-1 or 4-1 and you've given the game away, right? Like that's going to be an emotion people are going to have.
I think it's important when you've given the game away. Who is the you? If you include yourself in that you, then I have a lot more time for it. But if it's the royal you, this idea of I'm perfect, my shit don't stink. The rest of you pick up your bootstraps. If there's even a little bit of that, it's counterproductive, right? And there's no such thing as perfection. There's no such thing as 100% this and that. I think it's fine for certain players to have a little bit of that. In fact, I think it's necessary for elite athletes to have a little bit of that my S don't stink attitude. And I think it's a fool's errand to assume that they don't. The problem is that when the scales are misaligned, especially in MLS, where you've got one guy making 45 times the amount that the other guy does, and I know everybody likes to say it doesn't matter. There's no way that it doesn't not matter. There's absolutely no way. We're humans. No. There's no way. We can claim otherwise until our dying day. We can get up and die on that hill. There's no effing way in the world that doesn't matter when the chips are down. And the chips have been down at this club for a while. So it leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth. There's no way around it, right? Like there is none. And I don't, there are people in the chat that are saying, what he really should be doing is an after school special. Hey Sigurd, you had yourself a bad night, kid. Here's an orange slice. Let's go watch your video session and sing sea shanties. That might not be his personality, and that's fine. That's fine. We don't need everybody to be that, cliched version of like the wise old Obi-Wan sage, but we don't need this. And I think it's fair to say less of this, man. Like, where did you think this was okay to start doing these shenanigans again? That speaks to an issue, and I can't see it any other way. I'm sorry, guys, and I'm really not trying to beat up on the dude, but it's just we've been here before. And if we're not if we're not sitting here going, not on my watch, guys, not again, I think we may deserve to have to endure it again, right? Like,
yeah, so that you're exactly what you just said. It was kind of my point with the body language thing, right? People still have PTSD from last season, and this could be just, if this was Lorenzo Insigne's first season and he's doing a little bit of that, Is it a conversation that we have? It might be, but not to the extent that we're having it, now. It's just because of kind of what transpired in the past. You understand how easily I think things can fall off the tracks, right? Go off the rails. I think there is a possibility, where that does happen. We've talked about it. One win in
Mhm.
in their last 7 outings. You know, there's a standard now that needs to be upheld because when things do go sideways, there always, at least in the back of the mind of fans, that there always could be uh, the fact that this could fall off the rails. That said, like, I want to be like clear in my stance. I personally don't make much of it. Right.
Mm.
I think it's part of his personality. I think great players have that embedded in them at times, and it
Yep.
might rub people the wrong way. But uh, especially from, a soccer perspective, you see that everywhere you play. Like, you'll watch the Euros, you'll see that 50,000 times a
One
game,
hundred.
right?
So
So
such a good point, Mike.
it's
Yeah.
just the culture that he's grown up with. It doesn't necessarily always mean that, like, you know, I'm so much better than you. What the heck are you doing? Kind of thing. It's more
Right.
so just like a
And
soccer language kind of thing.
let's call a spade a spade. Like, if the same players that were getting butthurt about it last year are equally butthurt about it this year, that's a them problem, right?
Mhm.
That's asking the impossible, right? It takes two to tango, and if there has been no comeuppance in terms of, like, yeah, it's just a part of football. This guy's pretty fiery. If they're holding a standard that's been proven false last year, this year, that's a them problem, right? But that speaks to a different issue that's not worth getting into. And yeah, it is a part of football, 100%,
All right.
100%.
Well, fair enough. I mean, the big teller will be Wednesday night, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
this team will need to bounce back, and this is going to sort of lead into the Herd's the word. But, like, obviously, John Herdman came out after the game with some comments, and really they weren't directed at any one player; they were directed at the team and the way that things
Well, I
went.
mean, he did. Quajo caught some strays, like he
Yeah,
brought up nutmegging, and then immediately. Listen, guys, get comfortable. It's 2 minutes and 17 seconds. My herd word. It might be the record, but I think it's important to get them all in. And I did like a bit of a super cut here. So
all right, let's do
let
it.
me know when to run it, and we'll
All
go.
right, let's drop it.
Okay.
Can I see that paper for a sec? Huh, that's odd. What are you talking about? Oh, have you not heard? Heard what? Heard the word. Heard the word. Don't you know about the herd? Surfing!
Anything can happen in football these days.
Oh, what went wrong tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said disappointing. I mean, that's an understatement. Yeah, a real understatement. That was, I think, for the fans, firstly, to apologise. I mean, we weren't at the level tonight. And, while there's effort there in different parts of the field and opportunities, we're too soft. We've give goals away tonight at home. And we've discussed this. We got to be harder to beat at home. There's got to be an identity that the fans can be proud of, and I think that's the first night in my time where I've really shared probably the disappointment of the fans. I always look for that silver lining, whether it's the effort or being tough and creating opportunities. But tonight, I thought we were flat. I thought we were flat tonight, and whether it's a week off or the guys maybe underestimating Chicago, I don't know. It's very raw at the moment. We've had some conversations in the dressing room, but it is very raw. But I share the disappointment of the fans. I think the players do, and we can't see that again. We've got 3 days to turn this around, and as I've said to them, the real us have to show up on Wednesday. The real us have to show up on Wednesday, because that wasn't us. This has been, a trend. At times you've got to put the ball into Rose Ed. We're trying to nutmeg players in our own, right in our own attacking quarter. So I think for us, it's we keep talking about that maturity of a championship team. I don't know. I mean, I'm emotional. I'm really emotional about this one. I've never been this disappointed in 30 years of my coaching career with women, men, youth teams, whatever. It's this one sucks.
Yikes. Thoughts, boys? Because I obviously have a few. That's why I put a supercut together. Do you want me to open the dialogue here?
I just want to say I love John Herdman. He's like the best quote out there. He can be a bit dramatic at times.
A bit. Do you think the unkempt hair was on purpose? Because of course it was. Yeah. The man likes to gamble. And I'm of the opinion that you can only call a game the most disappointed you've ever been in 30 years once. And never again.
Exactly.
Right? Do you think this was a good gamble? Or a terrible gamble? I mean, obviously, we're now making huge suppositions, but there's a big
It's a
part
great
of me that
question.
thinks
Hey,
that
it's
this
a great
might
question.
blow up in dude's face
Sure.
in a big way, and I'm nervous.
Sure. We know he does this kind of thing, right? Like, we know he uses press conferences and media availabilities to sometimes send messages to opposing teams, to his own team,
To himself in the future. To himself in the past,
it's like, exactly. Is this a good idea to do it now? I think so. Like, call it the most disappointing you've been in 30 years of coaching. Maybe that's a little much.
I mean when you look up hyperbole in the dictionary, there's his picture.
Yeah, I mean,
with unkempt hair saying, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you did lose a couple of heartbreakers in the World Cup, in this little tournament that you coached in. But that said, I get the emotion
You're saying Chicago Fire in June doesn't stack up to playing against Belgium at the World
Well,
Cup?
I mean,
Nope.
Chicago were playing for the World Cup at one point back in
Yeah.
2017,
Chicago
right,
was
signed Bastian Schweinsteiger,
gonna win
of course.
the World Cup. Yeah. Well, that was great. That was a deep cut. That was a serious MLS head
For the
joke
old
there.
school MLS
My
heads out there
God.
who don't remember
My
what the hell that
goodness, I am proud of us, boys.
was. But like, I get where he's come from. The idea is that, look, you were at home, you played really badly. You need to kind of send what the F, guys. Like that's as much as you can go into the media and say what the F. And I think this was an okay time to do it because, like we said, one win
It
in
better
7.
because you only get one. You only
Yeah,
get
well,
one.
one win in 7. You gotta the narrative, as we've said, is shifting a bit. The vibe around the team shifting a bit. And I think that's where you kind of use that media moment to try to, again, sort of give your team the what the F, and also sort of pat the fans on the back and like essentially apologize for a poor performance
There
at
are
home.
100,000 different ways to do that without anteing up the personal responsibility. This is the worst game I've ever coached since I picked up inverting the pyramid, essentially. Like since I was listen, hyperbole's fine. This is a guy that brought a sword to Qatar, right? We have to expect this, but oh my God, man. Oh my God. I am worried because you don't get to do this again. And we just spent most of the thing coming up with a million different reasons why you don't need to panic about this. Chiefly among them, who cares about this campaign? None of us did at the beginning. I'm pretty sure I still don't, right? Like this is all gravy to
I
me.
don't
I'm
know.
still vibes, man. But again, you don't get to do this again. Like if as John Herdman coaches us when we reach MLS, when we reach TFC 2016 levels, when we regain MLS 2016 levels, and we get all the way to MLS Cup and we lose on penalties to not even a shot on goal. If that ever happens again, I quit TFC. But I'm just saying, Herdman doesn't get to do that again, right? Like it's now less somehow, and he might do it again, but then it becomes Coach Gaffer who cried wolf, right? There's only so many ways I can say the same thing. So somebody please come in and tell me their thoughts.
Well, like, I mean, there's a standard now. There's a new standard.
That's what I was
There's
gonna say. Yeah.
there's something that John Herdman is trying to set, right? There's a benchmark that he's trying to set. So like, if this for him in terms of when we talk about new standard, this is unacceptable now, and
Agreed.
this is the way that he goes out to do it, then I can live with that because I want Toronto FC to be the team that gets so infuriated after a performance like that, right? I want them to throw around language like that because I think there's now a belief within the team that they they won't fall back to this kind of level. Or, the next time they do, Herman will have another, you know, phrase up his sleeve or another anecdote up his sleeve, whatever it is to motivate the team, right?
Mhm.
I'm okay with this because I think it was warranted after that performance, but not just
Yes.
that performance, the run of games that
Slide.
came out. Like
The
that
slide.
performance
Yeah.
was the worst performance of the season. We're 16, 17 games in. It's a
Mhm.
gamble, you're right, because what happens if they go out and they lay an egg, 2 Saturdays from now, right?
Mhm.
It's
Can't be the second worst, and it can't be the worst. I mean,
well, like, yeah, but
Li-
he can always find different ways to phrase a bad
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah, I think we're
He's not
hanging up
stuck
on
in
the
it.
30-year worst performance thing. I think the
well,
key
because
core
you
message.
have a certain. I mean, it is a press conference. Everybody there is writing it down to
Yeah,
put it
sure.
out verbatim later, right? Like,
But
at
that's
a
the
certain
point. The point
point-
is to right. The point is to again send a message to the players, to the media. Okay. Now, what he says Mikey, you've said this well in the past. So what he's saying in the media isn't exactly what he's saying in the locker room. It's probably much more harsh than what he said
I'm sure.
on the
How
podium,
can it
right?
be?
Clearly.
How can it
But
be?
he's got to say it in a way. He's got to say it publicly in a way that journalists pick up on it. The players know it's in the media now. He knows you're not happy. The fans get a little bit of fan service because we know that the manager's not happy. He's come out and said it, right? How many times did we say last year, please, Terry Dunfield, stop saying like, oh, well, we had some positives in the game and blah, blah, blah. No, we wanted him to say like, ew, that was shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so he's come out and kind of said that in the most sort of coachy way you can possibly do that. And I think, like you said, it is warranted because that performance was that bad. And the standard is dropping a little bit, right? We were talking about breaking the season into phases. Okay. And this phase is not going the way that they had planned and the way that they had sort of mapped it out. So I think that it is warranted to say that, especially because you're turning around and playing in 3-4 days, right? So it's an opportunity to say like, hey, okay, this was a crap game. Okay. We accept that it was a crap game. You need to play better. Now you have an opportunity in a couple of days to turn it around at home against Nashville. And sort of turn and take this narrative and get it back on the right track, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't recommend other people do this because it's very
Yeah.
slippery
Don't
slope.
do this at work.
I mean, we've
but-
got our Gattuso
No.
here. Like these are proper global football quotables now. Like this guy, we're so
No.
lucky. But also, it makes me crazy sometimes.
Yeah, no, what I was gonna say, like, what I don't recommend like other people do what I typically do, and I always try to read into like what is it that they're trying to say, right? So for me, watching that 2 minute and 20-second, what is it, 27-second,
17 seconds.
2 minutes,
Exactly.
17-second Herdman
I can
clip.
tell you how many frames if you like.
It does feel like 45 seconds when he talks, so at least there's that. So the 2 minute 17-second clip, like what my biggest takeaways were, the performance on the field wasn't necessarily indicative of a setup or the way that they
Game plan.
went at game plan for Chicago. Yeah, perfect word there. It was on the players. It was like, or not necessarily on the player, but this was stuff that was controllable. Like it was, mentality. Were you ready for the game? Did you take Chicago too easily? He threw that one out there. Was it the week off? He threw that one out there. He threw out the giveaways, careless giveaway. Like this is all stuff that leaves a coach infuriated because it's not the X's and O's. It's not the setup. It's not necessarily just the execution. It's mental errors and that stuff. Like
Individual mistakes. Yeah.
when I was growing up playing, like my coach always used to tell me like he can live with the physical errors. you misplay a pass, you can live with that. It's when your decision making goes wrong or when you're not up for the fight. That kind of stuff drives coaches insane. So
Well, we
John Herdman,
saw it.
everything that he outlined was stuff that drove him insane. So that was kind of my takeaways. It was he was pissed about the types of mistakes that this team made, as opposed to the overall 4-1 result, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I agree with you. I'm so pissed that he lost all decorum in the press situation, which again, I have to stress, as fun as it is, and as much as I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, understand, I will not trade it for anything in the world. I love this man. I still think it's an opportunity to create problems for yourself that you don't necessarily have to indulge. So, it's just something moving forward. Maybe don't be that absolute for absolutely no reason, because
He'll find
bite
another
you in the
way.
ass.
This is John
Yeah,
Herdman.
I know.
He's got the media still around his finger. He'll be able to.
We'll
to
forget
find another
about it.
way.
And
It's very interesting that a man that can be that well, that capable in such a pressure cooker environment can sometimes completely lose his mind and just come
Well,
out
I mean, you
and
watch
do
that.
like,
You watch that
just
performance Saturday. I can
completely lose his
understand
mind.
why.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
why. All right, really quickly, Nashville Wednesday night bounce back game. We've talked about it a bunch of times. We've seen this Nashville team before already this season.
Mhm.
Lost 2-0 to them in Nashville. Gonna be a bit of a different team because the last time Gary Clark was managing this team and he got sacked just pretty much right after that TFC game, and they haven't appointed the new manager yet. It's supposed to. I've heard it's supposed to be BJ McCallum, who was the assistant U.S. men's
BJ
national team
Callahan.
manager. Has
Yeah,
he
yeah.
actually been hired yet? I don't think so.
Not yet.
Okay,
No, I haven't seen the official
so
announcement.
he's probably hanging around till the end of Copa America, then maybe taking over. I don't know.
Potentially, yeah.
Mhm.
I haven't followed this, but yes, he's in talks.
He's
at
the
least to
rumored
become
hot name. Yeah.
Kurt Tom
Yeah,
Bogert.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're going to be having an interim manager. Their form isn't much better than ours lately. And this is an opportunity to put some distance on a team that is, I believe, 8th in the East right now. So, this is, again, one of those games where you get an opportunity to really, again, kind of reestablish the good vibes, reestablish the narrative, but you have danger men. You have Heine Mukhtar, Walker Zimmerman. I don't believe he's with the U.S. men's national team right now, Copa America. So he'll be available. And this team is, again, it's going to be slightly different, but it's still very much the team that tries to base itself mainly on defense first and doesn't really create a ton of chances for itself. Especially on the road. So,
Players are screaming for an adjustment to that tactic, by the way. So
it depends on when the new manager comes in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They're kind of in our position kind of last year, right? Only not bottom of the East.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they've I guess got away from that identity to start the season, and they're conceding some really uncharacteristic goals. They've since tightened up, one loss in their last 5 games. Obviously, danger men still, Hanny Mukhtar, Sam Sturridge up top as well. And, shout out Lucas McNaughton, because Lucas McNaughton's also really found a role with that team and is playing some really good football as well. So they're still a team that can make things difficult for you, especially,
Hanny by
on the
yourself can
road.
make it difficult for you.
Yeah, but I'm thinking more so defensively. Like on the road,
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to give up much. They're going to probably play for, a very low chance game, and then try and, maybe see if Sam Sturridge or Hani Mukhtar could be a game breaker for TFC or for Nashville. On the plus side, though, I mean, coming off that match Saturday, Toronto FC are going to get 3 or 4 really good sparks back into their lineup. Obviously, Bernadeschi, Nixon Gomes, Prince Owusu is probably going to be closer to starting fitness. So hopefully they get him back. I don't know what Tyrese Spicer's deal is, but he could be a potential option as well. So, you're talking about some significant pieces that TFC would get a boost from. And when you talk about game breakers, having Bernadeschi and Insigne on the pitch at the same time, like we said, Mike, last on Huoria, I think the last time that was Montreal, right?
Yep.
That was the last time they probably played together. So those are 2 guys who individually are having great seasons. And now when you get both of them back for maybe the fourth time this season, if that, third time,
Fantastic.
it's going
Yeah.
to be I'm sure, a boost for TFC also when you add in Nixon Gomes, Prince Uwosu, and potentially Terry Spicer. So you know, I it's a opportunity to respond against a team that will try and make it difficult for you. Let's see if TFC can
Yep.
open this game up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, right now you got to. It's no longer early, right? It's no
Nope.
longer early in MLS, right? You are midway. You're past the midway point of the season at this point. You know, you now need to start looking at the table and figuring out where you're going to get points to try to put yourself into the right positions in the table to keep yourself in a playoff spot. And this is a game
Yep.
that I'm not calling it a full 6-pointer, but in a way it kind of is, right? Like if you can put a little bit of distance between yourself and the 8th spot in the East, you know, you're in a good place, or starting to get yourself back into a better place. Again, we talked about this on Who Are You, but there's a run now between now and the start of Leagues Cup, which is going to be not the easiest for TFC in terms of opponents. But if you can sort of get back on track in terms of that sort of point and a half per game sort of track, you know, you put yourself in a good spot after coming out of the cup, you know, and that's really your stretch run. Because all of a sudden you come out of the cup, whether you make a deep run or you don't, and now you're really in the stretch drive for playoff placing and things like that. So this is actually going to be a pretty critical little stretch here before they break for Leagues Cup. Gents, anything else just before we wrap up? Anything else you want to sort of bring up before we?
Oh, Canada,
send everybody
Argentina on Thursday. So
Yeah.
Really quickly, I want to get your guys' thoughts on the captaincy. So obviously, Jesse Marsh has named the Copa America roster. Ubo's on it. That's a whole other debate. Other podcasts have talked about that much better than we ever will. But I do want to talk about the selection of Alphonso Davies as men's national team captain. And Stefan Eustáquio will be vice captain. Gentlemen, how are you feeling about that? Because I feel like there's a narrative out there that is Alphonso should not be captain, but wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I love it. He's going to be the face of the Canadian men's national team, whether it is, you know, for the Copa America in 2024. I mean, he still is. Every time you listen to a radio ad, it's Alphonso Davies and the Canadian men's national team will go to the Copa America and play Argentina. It's not Stefan Eustáquio and the Canadian men's national team. It puts, you know, extra responsibility on his shoulders as a world-class player that I think, you know, he can handle it. I don't think it's a major shift, major difference. And I think it meant a lot to him personally as well. Right. I think he has this chip on his shoulder almost, where he does want to be recognized and rewarded for what he brings to the table. And I think an easy way to kind of do that for a guy like Alphonso Davies and keep him happy is to give him that captaincy and reward him for that. So, you know, Stefan Eustáquio would have been a solid choice, but at the same time, when you have a guy like Alphonso Davies on your roster that, you know, when any other country looks at your team and is going to go down the roster, and Alphonso Davies is obviously going to be the name people recognize the most, it makes sense. It does, for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there was no way around it. When you look at how the armband is handed out on the Canadian women's national team, you know, how long Sinclair, how long Sinky got it. It's just, there's precedent there. I think he would have seen it as a snub, right or wrong. It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. Is it permanent? Who knows? Is it going to be a successful thing? I have my fears, but I also think that it was a no-brainer. It had to be done. So now,
it's not because he's the best player, right? That's not the reason why I think it was the right decision. It's because of everything else, like the experience that he can bring to the table. No one
Yep.
else on this Canadian men's national team can bring to that level. And then
Mhm.
there's also like I said, I really want to emphasize that part. I think it was something that he likes to be recognized for that kind of stuff. And I think that's
And
if you don't do that, then you're risking maybe
you're
something
one
else.
100%. I mean, listen, Herdman was talking about how he was asking Fonzie about what their training regimen at Bayern was like, in 2018, right? So it's been a lot of this sort of blowing smoke up, like celebrating, Fonzie's accomplishments in the Champions League and playing at such a high level on his club side, and what he brings to the party in terms of when he gets with the Canadian men's national team and what he imparts and that sort of stuff. And I think it's time. It's time. I have my worries about it. I'll be honest,
I don't
but
even know if it's
I
time. Like
yeah,
it might not
yeah,
even be time, but I think it's
mhm.
inevitable.
Yeah. That's inevitable is a better word.
I
It's
I don't
inevitable.
know if come Thursday night, he's going to be the perfect captain for Canada, right? I
Hmm.
definitely have question marks about whether or not he is going to be the best choice Thursday night. Is he going to
Hmm.
be the
Hmm.
best choice in 2 or 4 years' time? Probably.
Yeah,
That's
that's
where I
fair.
come with this.
Like I think about like my boy Junior Hoylett, right? Leader on the field, absolutely. Some of it's by virtue of seniority. But would I give Junior the captain's armband on the Canadian men's national team? No, because I think it nullifies the sort
He's
of
worn it.
quiet. Yeah, I know, but on the regular, I think it
Yeah.
nullifies that sort of like under the radar leadership that my boy JH seems to excel at, right? The sort of speak softly and carry a big stick kind of leadership. I don't know if Alfonso's the same kind of. I think he needs the lights, and so give him the lights and see what happens. Give him the flowers and see what happens.
Yeah, I think this is a one where you're thinking not about just Copa America. You're thinking about 2026. You're
Yeah,
thinking about him
exactly.
growing as a leader, growing into that role. And that's not a disrespect on Stefano Stacchio or anything like that. Probably Stefano Stacchio is the better captain right now, just in
I
terms
think
of
we can
just
all agree on that. Yeah.
immaturity and being a bit older and that kind of perspective. But
Hmm.
yeah, you give the armband to Alfonso Davies. You if it's gonna happen now, it's gonna happen later. You might as well just do it now and let him grow
Yeah.
into the role. And he's gonna make mistakes. He's not gonna be the perfect captain right now, 100%. But he is the face of this. He's the face of this
Yep.
right now, right?
He is.
Right, and
He
and
is.
and that is the big push behind that right now. Is that he's the
Yeah.
face of
Long
this
and short
thing?
of it. Yep.
That's a question that I could come back to, or the one question I could come back to is how much does a captaincy matter, right? To a guy like
I think
Stefan
it's.
Estacchio, I think it matters less than to a guy like Alfonso Davies.
Yeah,
I
You know what I
one
mean?
million percent agree with you. 1 million. I do think it matters to Estacchio, and I think in the same respect that we don't want to introduce a variable that we can't control with Fonzie and are trying to eliminate it by giving the armband, I would be remiss to say, Estacchio doesn't care at all. Of course he
Mhm.
cares. So you've also
yeah.
got to be aware that, you don't want to ignore other players in the camp or on the national team that may need it in a different way, and hence the vice captain
Well,
thing, so
there's a whole
yeah.
he also amounts. There's like a whole council, a leadership council.
Yeah, leadership
So
council.
it's
Yeah.
it's gonna have Alistair Johnston on it. Oso, I think, is on it. Like,
Mm-hmm,
there's gonna be a lot of guys on that. I don't know if Richie's on it or not, but like, I think he's not wearing this armband alone. You know what I mean? Like, he's got the
yeah.
armband, but he's gonna have
The
a lot of
brotherhood.
support behind
Mm-hmm.
the
It's like a
armband.
potato sack race, and they can all wear
Exactly.
it. Just stretches
So we'll
out
see
a
how these
lot.
guys do
Mm-hmm.
Thursday against Argentina. Okay, well, thank you for tuning in to another Toronto Till I Die episode. Follow us on all the socials. Search Toronto Till I Die. At this point, I checked on the old Google box there. You pretty much can find us through that. You can find us on all our socials. So do that.
What's a Google box?
The old Google. I'm an old man. I just call it
Okay,
Google box.
cool.
Why not?
Nice.
Um,
Ask your grandkids to do it for you.
Yeah, exactly. If you're on the podcast version right now and listening, leave a comment. Give us a 5-star review. We'll start reading them out like live because they're fun to read out. Good, bad. Well, hopefully you give us good. But, we'll read them out live as we start doing that over the next couple of weeks.
I love how you glossed over the part that's become part of the regular, some witty copy on all the socials and podcasts.
Yeah, well, we've done
Jeff
that in a
needs
couple
this
weeks.
for his soul, so please send them in. I love that part. That part's
We've done it in a
amazing.
couple of weeks. People know now. I think people know now.
Yeah.
All right, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, for Michael saying I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Peace.
And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.